When I took over as NSPE's executive director back in February, I faced the usual immersion course in society, operations, culture, and history that any new staff leader faces when joining an organization. Getting to know the people, to understand the problems and opportunities, and seeking to find the best way to address the unique needs of NSPE using the skills, knowledge, and talents that I've acquired and developed in a more than 35-year career assisting voluntary organizations achieve success. Just to keep things interesting, a new CEO is required to simultaneously find a way to engage with impact at a strategic and future-focused level, as well as dealing with day-to-day management and administration. It's sometimes an overwhelming process. So far, not quite 6 months in and counting, I think my scorecard is pretty good. I've avoided any major catastrophes. I've had to drop everything more than once to deal with some disruptive and unexpected activity. I hope I've achieved some measure of success simply keeping the trains running on time, as well as making incremental improvements wherever possible. On the strategic front, I've been getting out of the office to experience society affairs directly as much as possible. I spend a lot of time on the phone, introducing myself, talking, and even more importantly, listening to national, state, and local leaders. I've also made a study of the documentary evidence of NSPE's more than 75-year history. Not only is that a rich and storied history, it is exceptionally well documented. Like a lot of great causes and great organizations, the start for NSPE can be traced back to one man who not only saw the need, but took the action necessary to set things in motion. The idea was for an inclusive, non-technical organization that could be dedicated to the interests of licensed professional engineers, regardless of their practice area, that would protect engineers and the public from unqualified practitioners, build public recognition for the profession, and stand against unethical practices and inadequate compensation. That man was David Steinman. It is significant that state associations came first and national second. In May of 1934, David Steinman brought together the leadership of 4 existing state societies and offered a vision of how, united, they could all be made better. By September of that year, NSPE was officially formed, and David Steinman was its first president. Within a decade, prior existing state organizations had joined, or new state affiliates had been formed in half the states and were part of the fledgling organization. All 50 United States were represented by 1960. Professional licensure was the crown jewel around which NSPE was first organized. At the time of the Society's formation, fewer than half the states had enacted registration laws, but exercising engineering-like efficiency, the new Federation had completed the job of passing licensure laws in all 50 states by the time NSPE was celebrating its 25th anniversary. Now, that's not to say that this growth and accomplishment occurred without controversy. From its earliest days, the Federation faced contentious issues. There was real and fundamental conflict between state societies and national. Some states, like national, wanted only licensed professional engineers to be permitted into membership. Many state societies had more liberal membership requirements. Some state societies wanted a dual membership requirement, state and national membership. Many states wanted that to be optional. And how familiar does this sound? Remember, I'm talking about the 1930s. But even from its earliest days, as serious as these internal divisions were, the organization never forgot that these parochial matters were purely incidental to the Society's foundational purposes. It never forgot that its reason for being was to make engineering a better and more satisfying profession and to improve the quality of life, security, and well-being of society writ large. NSPE created its first code of ethics in 1946. It launched Engineers Week in 1951, published its first salary survey in 1952, created the Board of Ethical Review in 1954, created its first functional section in 56, awarded its first engineering scholarships in 58, and conducted the first National Math Counts competition in 1984. And I'm just skimming the surface here. Why this history lesson? Because as I studied NSPE's history, and as I talked to its current members, it struck me that the society is suffering from a lack of long-term memory of its contributions, its role, and the debt the entire engineering community, and even society at large, owes to NSPE. But let's be frank. When I walked into NSPE in January, the prevailing mood was not positive or optimistic. On the debit side, membership was shrinking, not at a calamitous rate, but definitely heading the wrong direction. Resources were short and needs were high. The organization seemed more aware of what divided it than what united it. On the credit side, though, leadership was passionately committed to setting things right, and it was deeply and seriously engaged in concrete efforts to do so. It was well on its way through a strategic assessment and review process based on a book called Race for Relevance. Did I hear perhaps a little bit of a groan at the back of the room? A sense of deja vu all over again? Been there, done that, heard it all before, never goes anywhere. Perhaps some of you in the room were here for NSPE at the Crossroads, or NSPE, a Concept for Action, or maybe more recently, NSPE's Future Directions Task Force. To be sure, in recent years, the strategic planning process has fallen into a bit of disrepute, and not just at NSPE. As the speed of business caught up to high-speed technology, there were those who declared the strategic planning process dead and ridiculed anyone who continued to do it. And I'm sure we have all seen examples of plans well crafted, but then put on a shelf to die, never to be heard from again. You have very good reason to be a little bit skeptical. But to paraphrase the bard, the fault, dear Brutus, is not in our strategic plans, but in ourselves, that we have failed to live by them. While the age-old process of creating huge documents outlining detailed 5-year plans has fallen by the wayside, strategic thinking is alive and well and remains essential to organizational success. Today, modern strategic planning is an evergreen process, not an exhaustive documentation of specific tactics and objectives frozen in time. I would look at the continuous succession of NSPE's strategic plans and grand initiatives not as failures, not as false starts found wanting and then abandoned. Looking at NSPE's history of strategic planning, I do not see a history of lurching from one new bright and shiny object to another, trying the strategy du jour and quickly abandoning it, starting from scratch or floundering in search of the right mission or focus. No. NSPE's governance and strategic history is one of endlessly challenging itself. Are we doing the best we can today, for our members today, in the world they live in today? And that's a good thing. Still, I don't think many people in this room would challenge me if I were to say these are not the best of times in NSPE's history. In some ways, I would characterize the place of the society finds itself today as a tale of two movies. First, how do we break free from the endlessly repeating loop it sometimes feels like we're caught in, the way Bill Murray was in Groundhog Day? Or how do we get back to those glory days of our past that sometimes seem so distant, remote, and sinking fast from our sight, as in Back to the Future? All right, then, enough of movie references. What is it that this is all about, and what are you going to do about it, Golden? Let me tell you. Within a few weeks of starting at NSPE, I had identified what I felt needed to be my initial organizational-wide priority goals. There were 6 of them. I presented them to the executive committee and then to your board of directors, and it was agreed that these would be my key areas of focus in my first 6 months as executive director. That first goal picked up work that the board already had begun in its own Race for Relevance efforts. Who do we serve? Now, the obvious answer is we serve our members, but we need to be more precise than that, or we will miss some factors that would be critical to our success. First, as an operational entity, the association is governed and led by two constituencies: the leadership, those individual members who are actively engaged in an ongoing basis with NSPE activities, then the state associations. Remember that we are a federation. Without state societies, there is no NSPE. Together, these make up the association with a capital A. And whenever today I say NSPE or the society or the association, please understand that this is what I mean. Of course, the organization exists not to serve its own purposes, but to serve its membership. And that membership is defined as licensed professional engineers and those aspiring to licensure. Some part of that demographic cohort are already in membership, but not all. I like to talk about two kinds of members, by the way. There are dues-paying members, and there are non-dues-paying members. Now, I wish I could say that this diagram was to scale, and we could claim that a vast majority of those eligible for membership, in fact, were dues-paying members, but I can't do that. There is still a lot of room for growth. Now, an important feature of NSPE's strategic and operational reality is that the pyramid doesn't end there. At a national level, we also exist to serve a substantial audience of technicians through our NICET certification division. Although not a part of our core membership constituency, NSPE leadership wisely decided many years ago that to successfully serve and meet the needs of the engineering profession, we needed to ensure the quality, competence, accountability, and standards of the whole engineering team. Since 1961, this has meant providing more than 150,000 specialized certifications to highly qualified individuals. So collectively, we have four key categories of customers who depend upon the national organization to provide services that meet their needs. And every day, I need to be asking myself, are we doing everything we can to meet the needs and improve the lives of the active and engaged volunteers who participate in the association, the state associations we provide service and support to, the engineers who are in membership or who might be convinced to join, and the technicians who fill out the engineering team. But the pyramid doesn't actually end even there. Unlike for-profit organizations, we exist for more than the benefit of customers and shareholders. We exist for a higher purpose. We exist to advance and support public confidence, health, safety, and welfare. And before I move on, it's important to remember that in some ways this diagram is upside down. The last level is the most important. It should be on top. And the engaged leadership, we should form the smallest and least important part, occupying the bottom, with the responsibility to hold up those above us who are resting upon our shoulders. Which brings me to my second priority. Branding and value are big concepts, and I'll spend a little time with them. But when I first got here, there was a more immediate and urgent need, and you didn't need to be a genius to recognize it. We are membership organizations, and more than half of our revenue at the state and national levels comes from dues. And membership at both the state and national levels was shrinking. To make matters worse, we weren't doing much in the way of membership recruitment and marketing. So I immediately took to the board, and it immediately approved a commitment to take steps to increase NSPE's membership marketing capacity. The board approved a 5-fold increase in resources to continue the established program of jointly funded national and state campaigns developed by state societies, to expand national-level email to former members and past purchasers of NSPE products and services on a quarterly or even more frequent basis, with targeted messages based on their prior purchasing activities, to conduct a nationwide membership marketing campaign for three-tier membership directed at the newly licensed engineers and possibly those who had passed the FE exam through both email and direct mail, and to provide ongoing support to state societies in their ground-level membership outreach, offering nationals resources for projects and opportunities as identified. In the area of retention, with the help of an outside telemarketing firm, we began contacting the largest group of lapsed members via phone to try and get them to renew their membership. And those efforts have already yielded strong results. But let me emphasize, these are only first and most immediate steps. We can't just market our way out of our membership dilemma by selling harder. You can't market successfully unless you're offering something of value and can articulate that value in a compelling and meaningful way. And that's where we get into the bigger issue of NSPE's brand promise and value proposition. Simply put, are we offering what the membership needs? Now, associations, all associations, face a very unique challenge, a challenge that for-profit corporations don't need to be bothered about. The value and the benefits that we deliver fall into two categories. There are individual benefits. The value from these benefits can be controlled and limited to members, those who pay dues, or to non-members who pay a premium fee for the services that are received. If you don't pay, you don't get the service. That includes things like publications, meeting registrations, discounts on insurance, etc. But these individual benefits make up only a part, and to a large degree, the least important part of the value our organizations create. There are also stakeholder benefits. This is value delivered to the community as a whole, things like lobbying and public relations. The benefit from these programs are enjoyed by all, regardless of their membership status, and cannot be restricted to members only. The challenge for us as an organization is that as an individual engineer, you still get full benefit from every legislative victory the society achieves, even if you don't pay dues. And our costs in delivering that value doesn't go down if you choose not to participate by paying dues. The marketing challenge is to convince beneficiaries to pay through dues for value they will receive even if they don't contribute financially. It gets even more complicated within the NSPE economy. How? Because the same customer or member is receiving benefits from both the state and national. The individual benefits, the one you can control and limit to those who pay for them, they vary from state to state. But typically they include things like seminars, conventions, networking opportunities, leadership opportunities, newsletters, and information. The individual benefits offered by national include things like free PDHs, the PE magazine, again, networking opportunities, leadership opportunities, and so on. That leaves the stakeholder benefits. And the stakeholders' benefits are delivered in part at the national level and in part at the state or local level. Even where the stakeholder benefits are not the result of intentional or planned joint efforts, national activities can enhance and support success at the state level and vice versa. So as a threshold matter, defining a brand and defining value is not a national thing or a state thing. There is no escaping the fact that solving our branding and value dilemma is a challenge that national and the states share, and that we could not solve separately even if we wanted to. One more thing about branding. An effective brand is made up of more than just the services and the value you offer. Almost more importantly, the relevance and effectiveness of your brand promise rests upon whether your actions and offerings are consistent with and built upon the unifying mission and the shared values of the community you serve. They need to be authentic, not just marketing spin and advertising slogans. Okay, it's easy for me. I'm new. I walked in the door with nothing to color my thinking other than what I had been told, and told consistently throughout the search process. And if that wasn't enough, the mission statement is also printed on the back of each of my business cards. And I took that mission at its word. NSPE in partnership with its state societies. If you view mission and values as a contract between the association and its members, and I do, we need to honor that contract. It isn't so much a question of hierarchy, who controls what, who is primary, who is secondary, etc. It's more like a question of organizational DNA. You can't divide the organizations, you can't divide the elements without changing the fundamental character of the organization, which raises three imperatives for NSPE in the area of branding and value delivery. How do we get more leverage from the state and national synergy? Since this means that NSPE is only as good as its weakest link, what can NSPE do to make its state associations stronger? And what is the unique contribution of national to this mix? Now, I'll come back to this issue of the interdependence of state and national. In many ways, it is the most important issue facing NSPE in its future. But let me get back to my personal brand promise to the association and address the remaining priority goals that I committed to the board to deliver on. Okay, good decisions depend on having good information. You don't have the luxury of wishful thinking as a basis for committing finite resources, and hope is not a strategy. Think of the amount of market research, product development, and marketing expertise that goes into any for-profit business's product and service decisions. Then compare it to the typical association meeting. Sincere, intelligent, and well-meaning colleagues sit around a table brainstorming possibilities. How about such and such a program, someone says. Sounds like a good idea, says another one. Our members would love that. The chairman takes a vote, it passes. And with little thought or direction, no market research, no consideration about the resources it will take to make this program happen, whether the program can ever be self-sustaining, or the impact on other programs, staff is tasked with developing a business plan and a proposal for the next meeting. And we all know that once a program gets started, no matter how big a failure it proves to be, it is almost impossible to get an association to stop doing it. It's likely going to be perpetuated forever. Now, when something like this happens, it is not the board's fault. Boards only make a decision in a vacuum if you allow that vacuum to exist. And even if the information needed to make a good decision exists somewhere, remember that information held by one person or an isolated working group is all but useless to the organization. The power of information increases exponentially when it is shared. Now, with less than 6 months' experience at NSPE, I am still learning. So it is not surprising to me that I'm still discovering new things daily. But what I was alarmed about was the number of times I'd stumble upon something that I didn't know about. And when I looked into it, I found out that no one else in the building knew anything about it either. I found examples of really great committee work, but no staff involvement had resulted in no direct handoff and accountability and no follow-through. I'm working to fix that. I've started a twice-monthly written report to update the full board, made some adjustments to how information and agenda materials are presented at the board meetings. I'm assigning a staff liaison to every external group representing NSPE. And I will continue to focus on improved transparency and communications at every level and in every aspect of NSPE activity. Now, as an aside, I am often asked the perennial question in associations, do I believe associations ought to be member-driven or staff-driven? And I think that question poses an entirely false dichotomy. Instead of worrying about who's driving the association, why not adopt a blended term? Member-directed and staff-driven. Now, in order to learn about NSPE and its needs, I have done a lot of asking and a lot of listenings. I've made a commitment in February to reach out and make contact with every state and key strategic alliance group that NSPE has. Every state's leadership has had at least a voice message from me. I've talked to many of you by phone. I visited 5 different states and the state association meetings in June alone. And I've participated in meetings of the National Academy of Engineering, the American Association of Engineering Societies at a number of different levels, as well as with some of the technical societies and others. I plan to continue that effort to the maximum extent possible, given the finite nature of the time, money, and energy available to me. The better I get to know you, the better I can help you achieve your goals and meet your needs. Now, this one is perhaps a little bit too much under the hood or inside baseball for me to spend much time on here. Suffice it to say, a major element in following through on strategic planning discussions and race for relevance initiatives is a process to ensure that we have the right people at NSPE headquarters in Alexandria with the right skills, spending their time on the right things to achieve operational excellence. The process has begun and will be ongoing. And then finally, the big kahuna, long-term and sustainable profitability and growth. First steps have been taken. The Race for Relevance task forces and their recommendations, which are available for your review online, were accepted by the board in April and have been incorporated into the new budget for the fiscal year that began on July 1st. As I previously mentioned, resources have been added to membership marketing. A short-term membership acquisition and retention plan has been initiated. More needs and will be done in this area. Advocacy is a major piece of NSPE's value proposition and brand promise. It's also getting increased attention and focus. We've added a staff member in government relations who's already making a mark, working with our licensure, legislative and government affairs and licensure and qualification committees, the PAC, and our federal advocacy efforts. We've improved our legislative and regulatory monitoring and tracking capacities at both the national and state levels, and opened up access to these tools at no charge to our state societies. We're doing a lot in this area. I've been here less than 6 months, and in just that time, National has taken direct action on the profession's behalf on the following issues federally and in cooperation with states who asked us for our assistance. We are doing good work in this area, but we can do more, and we can do better. In particular, I am focusing on increased levels of proactive collaboration between states, as well as between states and national. For example, I am intent on building our capacity to act as an information clearinghouse and lobbying network. All of these are just first steps. Stay tuned. There's more to follow. One of the key concepts of Race for Relevance, and one that the authors took even further in their second book, Road to Relevance, is the strategy of building on strength and concentrating resources. You all recognize this. NSPE cannot be all things to all people. To be successful, the organization at all levels needs to identify what we do better than anyone else, what our members can't do for themselves, what we're passionate about. In short, what NSPE and its state societies, and only NSPE and its state societies, can do that will make the most difference in the lives and livelihoods of professional engineers, as well as the public that they serve. Now, next comes the hard part, being brutally honest in making those assessments, having the courage and exercising the discipline to take actions based on that knowledge, avoiding the temptation and the natural tendency to try and please everyone by softening the hard edges, going down to the lowest common denominator, averaging down. This means making hard choices, disciplined choices, and then actually behaving in a manner consistent with those choices. Let me give you just 2 examples. One of NSPE's core purposes is providing administrative service and support to state associations. And as a 3-tiered membership-based organization, membership acquisition is a core foundation too. So if these are the things that you value, if these are the things that NSPE must do better than anyone else, would the organization be structured at both the staff and volunteer level the way it is today? Would we be making the same budget decisions that we have? Would we be postponing investments on hardware and software upgrades as a cost-saving measure? I don't think so. Would we be providing more staff in the mailroom than are engaged in membership marketing and passively relying upon efforts of others to generate new membership sales? Of course not. Looking forward, suppose the decision was made identifying some other product and service, something more that we could do, something that we care passionately about, that we felt NSPE could do better than anyone else, and that the members could not do for themselves or through any other means. Maybe it's some critical support service that would improve the life of all engineers, like being a forum for creating knowledge and seeing it implemented. Are you willing to stop doing some perfectly worthwhile thing that has some value to some people in order to free up the resources to make this needed new and critical thing happen? Race for Relevance has started you down the path towards making those kinds of decisions. You've made huge progress, and you are in a much stronger position today to make these kinds of decisions than you were even a year ago. But the really hard part is making the choices. Choosing what you are going to say yes to, which is hard enough to do. Choosing what you're going to say no to, which is even harder. And then exercising the discipline to act on the basis of those decisions, which is hardest of all. That work still lies ahead. And let's be sure we keep our eye on the prize, creating value for the constituency we exist to serve. According to lean manufacturing theory, there are 6 attributes to customer value. First of all, what you offer has to offer your customer a complete problem solution. In our context, that means the association defines the member's challenge or opportunity and provides a total solution, eliminating the need for the member to go anywhere else. It has to offer an efficient solution. We need to fulfill the member's needs without wasting the member's time. What I want, I being the customer or the member. Associations must provide solutions to members exactly how they want it, not how the association finds it convenient to provide it. Where I want it. Where does the member need value? With mobile technology, this is rapidly becoming anywhere in the world. And remember this important factoid. Out of the 6 billion people on this planet, 4.8 billion have a mobile device, and only 4.2 billion own a toothbrush. When I want it. The priority must be not to offer solutions when the association wants to deliver it, but when the member wants to use it, on their schedule, not ours. Think about traditional educational conferences. It's being held today, no matter what else is crowding on your schedule. Compare that to e-learning, or the ability to access frequently asked questions on the web anytime during the day or night. And then finally, for what I'm willing to pay. And the bottom line is, if members are not willing to give up something of their own that they value, their time, their money, or both, for what you are offering, then what you are offering has no value, period. That is the focus piece of achieving strategic fit. The second aspect is integration. Are we offering a long menu of unrelated food choices, or do we offer a full and balanced meal? Do we offer interlocked activities that support and complement each other, or systems of activity that support and complement each other, instead of a service portfolio based on a diverse array of individual activities that seem fairly random? You can't achieve this by focusing on one service or product at a time, or making one decision at a time. That's where processes like Race for Relevance come in, and the strategic planning effort that will follow it. Hard work, you bet. But let me stress again, even if you do all the analysis and planning right, the work is not done when you write the plan. Strategic planning and its implementation are part of ongoing management and operations at this association. And for a 3-tier federated structure like NSPE's, it is vital that each component be involved in the association's overall strategic plan, that each unit be thinking and acting strategically in a consistent way, that each unit's micro-strategic plan supports a macro-strategic plan, creating a culture of collaboration and inclusion. It's easy for these discussions to get reduced to internecine battles over turf and power plays, national versus the states, staff versus volunteers. That's the wrong way. That narrows the scope to that tiniest piece at the top of the branding pyramid I showed you earlier. In short, that guarantees irrelevance. The good news is that you have a robust bicameral governance structure at the national level and a strong network of organizations at the state level already in place to have these discussions and make these decisions. At the national level, you have a broadly representative House of Delegates specifically charged with strategic planning, vision, and direction, as well as a board of directors to administer the affairs of the organization. At the state level, you have a network of active and engaged volunteer leaders, backed up by an active and organized body of state component staff, the SSEC. All we have to do is get them all working together. Getting this done is going to necessitate building up our armies and the materiel to arm and support them, freeing up existing resources currently consumed by less critical projects and reinvesting them in mission-critical activities, creating new revenue streams that can be invested in building capacity. But we also need to concentrate and build our volunteer workforce. Two of the critical challenges identified in Race for Relevance that are making it harder and harder for associations to perform at the level they need to are related to volunteers, whose engagement we depend upon: time pressures and generational differences. Recruiting, orienting, motivating, and rewarding volunteers has never been harder or more critical to an association's success. Bringing in the next generation of engineers and leaders is particularly important and difficult. Author Cynthia Damour identified 6 common challenges in sustaining the volunteer ecosystem. First, martyr leaders can kill your association. Paradoxically, these are the superheroes who throw their lives out of balance for the good of the association. You can think of a number of them, I'm sure. For all the good they do, they can also put your society at risk. Martyr leaders are new volunteer repellents. They make it easier for others to just let Bob do it. Sustaining their own position consists of scaring off potential replacements, all the while complaining loudly that they have no one to help them. Investing major components of your society's value proposition in just one person also puts that entire program at risk. What happens if they get hit by the proverbial bus, burn out, sour on the society, or retire? Volunteers need help streamlining their work, too. Very few of them went to school to learn how to plan a convention program or publish a newsletter, or even manage an effective meeting. But lack of time, you need to recognize, is not the problem. That's what people say, but that's not what they mean. People make time for things that are important to them. Making the work rewarding is the challenge, making it something that they identify is worth giving up their valuable time for. Skill gaps also repel potential volunteers. Too many associations invest all of their volunteer development efforts on people only after they've reached senior governance positions. How many of you send your folks to a leadership seminar, but only after they've already reached the president-elect position? Isn't that a little bit late to be showing them how it's done? Now that you're nearing the end of a long and distinguished service career, here is what you needed to know 5 years ago in order to be effective. Helping volunteers early to develop the skills that will allow them to move forward is the key to creating an ample pool of volunteers to draw upon. Bridges do need to be built across generations. Now, contrary to what you keep hearing about the younger generation, it is not true that they are lazy, selfish, or care less about volunteering than you did when you were their age. In fact, the younger generation today is actually volunteering at a higher rate than their elders. According to a 2006 study by the William E. Smith Institute for Association Research, the difference between Generation X and baby boomers is not in their propensity to join associations, but in their expectations about what membership means and the return it provides. How much of our effort to engage younger members is really about trying to convince them to be more like us, rather than finding out how to change our boards, our committees, our task forces, our style of doing business to be the kind of places they would be interested in engaging with? Boring, bureaucratic, time-consuming, and unproductive committee and board meetings repel dynamic leaders of all ages. So we simply need to change them. Ensuring that members have ample opportunities to engage with each other in ways that are meaningful to them is smart. If people think your board and committee meetings will give them an opportunity to make a difference, they'll be knocking down the doors to play. Now, all the data shows a positive correlation between engagement and membership renewal, satisfaction, and loyalty. In short, engagement is how you get members to join and get members to stay. Now, historically, traditionally, the only way for members to engage was in person. That's why state associations existed before national did. In 1934, state and local chapters made it practical for members, engineers, to get together and interact with each other. In fact, it was the only way for engineers to have direct and immediate contact with their peers. Now, technology has not replaced the need for face-to-face interactions, but it has created additional new communications channels and the ability to build communities around something other than geographic boundaries. Now, unfortunately, this process is additive. With each new form of engagement, we don't get to drop the old one. Being open to member engagement means opportunities both face-to-face and online, both formal and informal. The tactics, technology versus in-person, are different, but they need to serve a common strategy, that strategy of engagement. Now, according to McKinley Marketing's study on engagement from 2013, there are 4 elements. First, there is a cause. Many members belong to the organization for emotional reasons. They want to self-identify with a group of like-minded individuals to support a broader mission they all believe in. How effective are we being in helping them to satisfy that urge? Let's get some of our passionate members out into high schools to talk about the opportunities the engineering profession provides, and then let's showcase that to their peers. Make them feel that we care as deeply as they do about something that's important to them. Community. Expanding an online community is perhaps the most popular approach we see associations pursuing these days. New technology and tools allow associations to augment traditional offerings with other modes of community. However, a question arises with the rush to social media and online content. What are we doing to foster good old-fashioned one-on-one face-to-face interactions? We need to be doing them both. Content. The term you hear a lot about these days is content curation, going beyond content creation to achieving higher levels of engagement. Consider the extra value added to a static magazine article through the context, insight, and practical application that can be added by online member comments and debate over its content. The richness of an annotated article becomes a far more valuable resource and reference tool for the entire community. We have a competitive advantage to leverage in this arena, as our members will probably be more likely to add their expertise to our created content in support of a cause and a community represented by the association, as opposed to supporting a for-profit enterprise who merely publishes articles. And finally, communications. This is an area in need of major improvement by all associations. Communications has gotten so easy to do. We do too much of it, and we do it poorly. To borrow a phrase from a colleague of mine, we have to strive to stop being spammers. There has to be a better balance between promotional material and material that offers real evidence that the association is making a difference in the real world and providing valuable resources as part of membership. It is the latter of these two that will enable more engagement around communications vehicles. So now let me come back to the state and national partnership. The traditional way to look at federated multi-level organizations is to define one as the leader and the other as the subordinate. One is in charge, the other follows. In today's reality, the relationship between a so-called lead association and its components has shifted from a hierarchical structure to a more distributed but highly integrated system. The conversation has shifted from the debate over who exercises power over whom to a discussion of how all the elements collectively and collaboratively can form an integrated system to serve the members and the missions they share. What can we do to reduce the cost of administration by sharing resources? How can we avoid wasteful redundancy? How can this collaboration be equally lucrative in marketing products and services? In the area of advocacy, how can we form collective knowledge and strategies to benefit all? It is not an issue of power or control, but of collaboration as a total system. Perhaps a simpler way of putting it is like so: a member-centric structure. The members' needs and expectations are the organizing principle. The components, national, state, local, they play complementary roles. Who's in charge here? The member. And in this area, as in so many others, NSPE and the engineering professions were decades ahead of the rest of the association world and general society in recognizing that hierarchy of power and top-down directive governance, regardless of who, state or national, you place at the top, was not the best way to go. Let me go back to David Steinman writing in 1935 about the still new endeavor. For successful accomplishment of a professional society, unity and geographical organization are the essentials. The state societies of professional engineers, having demonstrated the effectiveness of this form of organization, are joining their forces in the national society in order to extend this program of service and accomplishment for the profession on a national scale. In this organization, the fundamental importance of the local unit will always be recognized. The national society, the state societies, and the county chapters are closely and reciprocally integrated, and all are regarded as having equal importance. Membership in one involves membership in all, wherever state societies and county chapters are organized. This is the logical and essential form of organization for building a united and integrated engineering profession. That was writing in 1935. Now, that's not to say that this is easy to do. Effectively integrating widely distributed, diverse, and fully autonomous entities into a collaborative force requires very careful, engineering and management. To do this, clear understandings of accountability, who is responsible for what, and transparency and openness are required. Not to overlook the need for the sincere goodwill of all involved. To think of the system, not just their particular parochial interests, in trying to make things work better for the member, for the mission. I had a meeting with state execs Wednesday where I proposed restarting a dialogue on operational excellence and focusing on member value that will profit all the societies at all levels. A lot of good work was done in the years 2006 and 2007 to negotiate and define a detailed working relationship between state and national association staffs. It assigned specific accountabilities around 6 governing principles. First, efficiency. Each level of the organization, chapter, state, and national, has a clear identity and a distinct role, with a constant effort made by the partners to eliminate redundancies and streamline service delivery to the members. Second, focus. All levels of the organization are focused on a consistent set of priorities in delivering member value, and maximize their resources across organizational lines to implement them. Third, viability. The strength and viability of each partner is essential for the success of the organization as a whole. Distribution of resources and methods of serving the members must be feasible for all entities and not disadvantage one partner at the expense of another. Fourth, accountability. Mechanisms need to be in place to ensure that each partner fulfills its roles and responsibilities, and that ultimately the member is served at the highest level of excellence. Fifth, service standards. Standards are in place to ensure a minimum level of service for all members, regardless of their state or chapter. And a minimum level of service and support is provided by the National Society to ensure that states and chapters are kept viable and strong. Finally, and probably most importantly, communication. Communications among partners needs to be dynamic. Information flow to all partners regarding member needs and issues, and back to members on the value at all three levels of the organization, and on the way members can access the services they need, has to happen, and has to happen well. Now, that work was not followed through on, and I intend to correct that mistake. In parallel with this effort, NSPE will be focusing on internal rebuilding of our information technology systems, staff, systems, and infrastructure, putting in place the resources and capacity to follow through on our part of this partnership. That's step one, getting the operational house in order. But actual prosperity for the states and national will require doing something more. It will require doing the right thing for the right purpose. Putting members at the center of a seamless delivery system requires exceptional partnership between all levels of the organization, national, state, and local. Speaking from national's perspective, yes, we are large, but we don't have a fraction of the people, the time, or the dollars to do it all for all 35,000 members, all on our own, even if we wanted to, and we don't want to. But in many cases, individual state societies don't have enough members or customers to do everything they want to or need to for their members on an economical and efficient scale. We can help pool that potential market, creating large enough numbers for each of us to serve effectively and profitably at all levels of the organization. Yes, national brings a lot to the table in the way of capabilities, creativity and innovation, and a culture of service. But we don't have a monopoly on those things. Each and every component, state and local, brings those things to the table too. Imagine what we might be able to do if we pooled all of that talent, creativity, innovation, and passion for service into new and high-impact forms of mutual service delivery and support to improve efficiency, to reduce our operational costs, to increase the value delivered by each state to its members. Think of what we might be able to achieve together if, instead of everyone chasing non-dues revenues dollars and doing their own thing on whatever scale they can manage, we focused instead on products and services offered in partnership, increasing the value of membership at all levels. This isn't a radically new concept, but it is being woefully under-leveraged. In the area of services to component organizations, existing examples, things we are already doing today, include shared administrative support, including database support, billing, collection, membership marketing, legislative and regulatory monitoring. But we're only scratching the surface here. Think of the things we are already, each of us, doing separately, and to some extent doing well. How much more are we capable of in terms of both quality and quantity? How much more and better would we do if we made a conscious and disciplined effort to pool all of the strengths, capabilities, creativity, and passion for service to members? Possible examples include, but they're certainly not limited to, offering templates. Templates for organizational documents, for websites, for newsletters, for Facebook pages, and the like. Joint purchasing arrangements, speakers bureaus, leadership training, in particular leadership development skills in things like conflict management and resolution, consensus building, facilitation skills, succession planning, etc. training in association management areas, things like finance and budget management, marketing, membership, event planning, etc. Assistance in leadership functions, such as facilitating strategic planning receipts. But look how empty that second column is. And that's the sweet spot, where joint activities might generate value to members, fueling membership acquisition, retention, and growth, and value to each state and local component through revenue sharing, co-marketing, and joint ventures. Possible examples include, but again are by no way limited to, things like an iTunes or Amazon-like e-commerce platform, where state and national associations can add offerings, including webinars, publications, or other products for sale, giving every member access to anything you choose to make available to them, from Nationals inventory or from any interested state or chapter's inventory, where ordering, billing, delivery, and revenue distribution is handled in an automated fashion. In the area of e-seminars, you can take this even a step further to a learning management and delivery system, where not only the product sales, being able to order up the webinar and billing for it, is handled for you, but things like continuing education credits, testing, and participation can be tracked, reported, and accounted for. All of these are possible. All or none of them may turn out to actually fit our needs. My point here is not to dictate solutions, but to open your mind to possibilities and to start the dialogue and begin developing concepts, imagining where there is a commercial opportunity for us, incubating to define the commercial potential it holds, demonstrating and testing products and processes in a marketing commercial context, market entry, and then growth and sustainability to generate financial returns. Now, one thing I've learned about the State Association in all my visits and in my calls, and that is when it comes to NSPE state societies, if you've seen one, you've seen one. One size definitely does not fit all. All of NSPE's state societies and chapters have unique competencies and strengths. All of them face a different set of challenges and needs. Each of them has different levels of need, capacity, and interest in doing things for themselves. So tiers of service and support need to be made available from national, offered a la carte. I am envisioning a coalition of the willing, not a forced prescription. If you're interested, fine, but it's up to you. At a more basic operational level, some state components already have dedicated staff. Others are served and served well by commercial association management companies, or AMCs. Some are adequately served entirely by volunteers. But NSPE has several state components that are so small or so under-resourced that they are unable to afford even commercially available AMC services. This is another area where pooling resources to achieve economies of scale may provide an opportunity for national to strengthen states by creating shared staff resources for them to rely upon. The economic concept of subsidiarity dictates that service from the outside should be brought in only where localized resources are inadequate or infeasible. However, where the free market has failed to adequately provide for needs, the shared interests of other components and the general good of all components creates an opportunity for some larger entity, regional or national, to step in and strengthen the organizational system as a whole. Forgive me if I repeat myself, but this issue is important. Components each serve unique member needs in a manner that only they can accomplish. The ideal is for all levels to work in harmony to achieve the goals for the greater good of the association at all levels. The keys to doing this include defined levels of services that each will provide to the members, a collaborative open partnership between the components, strong communications, differentiated but complementary services that give value to membership at all levels, and customized to regional and local needs, not a force fit. Without these, there will be frustration either at the lack of the support or the duplication of efforts, and we need to avoid both. Okay, reality check, the elephant in the room. What about state-only and self-billing states? I will confess that state-only membership and self-billing pains me. It pains me primarily because I understand that no state went that route for frivolous reasons. They each had a good reason, arguably an existential reason, an imperative to do so. And those reasons had to do with failures and shortcomings on NSPE's part. It pains me because every day I see member confusion and the inefficiencies it creates for the members we all exist to serve. And it pains me because it is not only redundant, but it imposes additional real dollar costs on state societies and the members who support them. Members are paying twice for services they are receiving only once. It pains me because it creates incentives for organizations to work against each other, to compete rather than collaborate. And it changes only the incidentals, the mechanics, the things under the hood that members don't care about and shouldn't need to focus on, things like administrative mechanics of marketing and billing. Finally, the weakening of the national-state unity concerns me because I do not think over the long term that it is sustainable for either national or the states. It doesn't change the fundamentals of how value is created for our members. It might work for a while, but over the long haul, if a member chooses one or the other, national or state only, does it change our obligations or reduce our costs for either states or national to do what is shown here in the overlapping portion of the circle? States saying they need to do to honor their accountability to the profession in all these areas without national? I know national can't without the states. When I visited Ohio earlier this summer, I had a chance to hear a presentation by Scott Miller, who is the director of the Center for Energy, Economics, and Environment at Ohio University. He was addressing the concerns of the energy sector specifically, but the economics underneath it are more broadly applicable. He argued that it was vital to break free of the boom or bust economic cycle by focusing on sustainable business models. Most business models today are short-term in focus, what works best for me now. And that leads to bubbles and collapse. Even the most established and seemingly invulnerable business concern can fall prey to such short-term thinking. What would profit me today and tomorrow be damned? But winning at all costs is not a winning strategy. Sustainable strategy is based on creating value for others first, and then determining how to use that created value for yourself. Reaching for a higher long-term purpose with passion for what you do in pursuit of a profit. Even more than in for-profit industry, the industry that Miller was specifically addressing, this is true for those of us in the not-for-profit sector. Certainly for our organizations, profit is the necessary final byproduct of our activities, but it is not the defining essence. Take a look at the most robust and sustainable business models in the for-profit economy, the ones that seem to thrive continuously despite volatility in the general economy, the ones that seem immune to boom or bust economic cycles. They are all based upon complex interrelationships, things like supply chains. Now, Miller was not talking about some sort of warm and fuzzy socialism. It was hard as nails capitalism, but a very conscious form of capitalism. Business is not a machine. It is an ecosystem. All of its parts are independent, creating greater value for all. It achieves profitability by focusing on a higher purpose than just short-term individual financial windfalls, by focusing on value creation in service to others, where leadership means maximizing the value in all its parts. And you know, after 35 years in not-for-profit management, it took a business professor talking about the economics of the oil and gas industry to fully articulate the key to a sustainable not-for-profit business model. So how do we go about fixing this? And I would dearly like to see it fixed. How do we get back to the concept that Steinman articulated and that served the profession so well for more than 3/4 of a century? There are two ways to try and do that, to go about making that kind of change. One is by executive fiat or force. Use coercion to try and create rules that force the states back and punishes those who resist. Well, I reject that path. First of all, it isn't my style. Secondly, it very seldom works. Instead, what we need to do is work hard to create every incentive for states to combine membership again and to use our billing and our marketing services, to make our support and engagement with the states so good, so effective, so efficient, so flexible to the needs of each individual state that they would be crazy to look anywhere else, or to build or buy for themselves something that NSPE is willing to provide to them for free. Harkening back to Scott Miller's sustainable business model, I intend to work to create value for the states first and leverage that to create value for NSPE second. And it took more than 35 years for Steinman to get all 50 states into NSPE in the first place. I'm willing to be patient for a year or two to get 11 states back. This will require cooperation and hard work from everyone at every level. It will require being informed by the past, but not a prisoner of it. The opportunities for simple misunderstandings to escalate into open conflict are many. And respectfully, those opportunities for disaster are not exclusive to national. I have seen examples of state invoices that label state dues as mandatory and national dues as optional. I can very well imagine the reaction if national included such wording or tactics in its membership marketing and recruitment efforts. I see every day the amount of staff time and resources expended to verify, research, correct, and refund dues monies back to self-billing states because of errors they made that caused them to send too much of their dues that they collected up to national. We've had numerous examples of members being repeatedly dunned, their membership canceled for non-payment, and services like getting the magazine or having access to the website being cut off, only to learn that the member had in fact renewed, but the self-billing state had failed to update national on this 3, 4, 5, even 6 months or more later. Now, I don't say this to try and justify past failures on national's part or even to assign blame, only to emphasize that being successful and making the national-state partnership work will require goodwill on all sides. We all can do better. So, we have a lot of heavy lifting to do. And who am I to help you try and do this? This is the kind of work I've done throughout my entire professional career. At the Association of Telemessaging Services International, we deregulated telecommunications and created a marketplace for competitive, enhanced telecommunication services, things like voicemail, changing forever the world of telephones and communication. At the Personal Communications Industry Association, we introduced the idea of ubiquitous and affordable personal wireless telecommunications and established the legal, regulatory, and business environment that was necessary to make it a reality. At the National Court Reporters Association, we achieved a complete technology revolution within the core profession and expanded the industry by creating entirely new fields of practice, like real-time reporting, captioning, and multimedia litigation support. As a volunteer at the American Society of Association Executives, we produced landmark research studies, books and articles, taught classes, developed leaders, facilitated meetings, drafted strategic plans. Now notice that in all of these examples I used the pronoun we. It is not an affectation, it is not the royal we. It is the first person plural, because each achievement included a lot of people. We was always the totality of the organization, a mix of volunteers and staff. What we accomplished in each case was never anything any one person or government entity could do for the profession from outside of it. or anything that a single state could accomplish. It wasn't anything a single individual within the profession or industry could accomplish. It required all those elements finding a way to work together to get things done. But I also don't say this with a false sense of modesty. They are all things that I was very much a part of making happen. Things that maybe would never have happened, or at least wouldn't have happened so well or so quickly if I had not been there and been a part of it. I am a fixer, making complicated networks or systems of human endeavor work together to achieve a common goal. It's what I do. I've done it before, and I want to do it for you. And here's my personal pledge and commitment to you. I cannot take the burden off of you, make choices for you, but I don't think you really want me to. I can help and support you in making smart decisions. I can call you on it when you start to stray into short-term, easy outs that fail to consider the long-term results of the decisions you're making. I can call you on it when parochial interests or wishful thinking seem to be crowding out the facts of the matter. I can provide creative, innovative, and practical options to support behaviors consistent with the choices you make and the commitments you make. But I can only do this with the cooperation, support, trust, and goodwill of all involved at all levels. I'm good at what I do. I will find ways to maximize your effectiveness in whatever paths you choose. I can do that even if it means leaving things at NSPE in the state they are, making the established, suboptimal, overly broad, and overly generic focus work as best it can, which amounts to making the best of a poor situation. I can do that, but I wouldn't be happy doing that. And although patience and persistence are two qualities I do possess, I question how much vigor and energy anyone can provide over the long haul, if that's what you want from your organizations. And I came into this assignment with success in the long haul as my motivating goal. My personal preference is, instead, to do the hard work that will help the society achieve focus, build on strength, and concentrate its resources on what NSPE, as the national component of a multi-level enterprise, cares most passionately about, does better than anyone else, and does that no other piece of the system can do to create value for professional engineers. During my listening tour with members and state society execs over the past several months, I have found plenty of disagreements to be resolved and no shortage of challenges to be overcome. I found no shortage of past sins to be atoned for. But I found something else, an abundance of character, values, integrity, and selfless dedication. My sense of excitement and optimism over what is possible remains very high because of that. Now, I am not naive or in denial of the serious challenges, even the setbacks, that NSPE and the profession have faced in recent years. And as I've observed before in other trade and professional associations, sometimes even the weight of past success can itself create challenges for the future. The underlying importance and principles upon which NSPE is based remain as valid today as they ever were. But the sense of urgency can become dulled over time. Familiarity can make it too easy to take for granted the value and benefits routinely delivered through the three tiers of national, state, and local organizational activism. For most of you working as engineers, the conditions these efforts help create have always been in place for you, and the press of more immediate concerns in your personal and professional lives understandably demand your more immediate attention. And let's frankly acknowledge that in addition to some great accomplishments, mistakes were made. In my conversations over what is needed for the engineering profession today, two schools of thought emerged. One of them views the world as a zero-sum game. Every organization in the engineering field, national, state, local, technical, needs to stand alone and justify its own existence. And this is true to a point. But implicit in this view of the world is the idea that anything one entity achieves must come at the expense of some other organization, that we are in competition for member devotion, attention, and dollars, asking them to choose either or. I view things differently. I value the strength of the word "and" over the word "or." Each organization certainly must deliver value to its members. But as I see it, and I think NSPE's history amply demonstrates this, the various levels of organization serve the profession best as a single system of autonomous but interdependent parts. Rather than a zero-sum game, this worldview starts from an assumption that we can do so much more together than possibly could be achieved, even collectively, by each of us working separately. Noble words and high aspirations, to be sure. And I am very cognizant of the need to make it practical, make it real for you. You don't want platitudes, you demand and you deserve results. Now, accomplishing that will be hard, but that's the job I signed up to help you achieve. With your goodwill and cooperation, we can translate this conceptual reality into this concept into practical reality. So let me come back to those two movies. Now, the one-paragraph plot summaries on Wikipedia or IMDb kind of miss the point. In Groundhog Day, Bill Murray was trapped, doomed to repeat the same day over and over again. And sometimes at NSPE, it feels like we're living that movie. There is drama and comedy and even a little bit of tragedy in our efforts to get out of it. But the real point is that we are not prisoners of the past, doomed to repeat its mistakes. We need to act in full awareness of past failures, informed by the past and the consequences of past choices we've made, but we can be stronger and better for what we have learned, good and bad, only if we decide to let go of the past and move forward. And what about Back to the Future? Now, nostalgia is a little bit of a trap. The good old days, when you take a good, hard, and honest look at them, were never as good as we choose to remember they were. And the point of this movie is not Marty McFly going back into his own prehistory in the hilarious hijinks that ensue. The point of this story is, what is it going to take for him to get back to his own realities and his path to the future, and to live that future in a more productive, satisfying, and important way? That's what we're trying to do here. I'm told that Ronald Reagan really loved this movie, even though it poked great fun at him. He even referred to the movie and quoted from it in the 1986 State of the Union address when he said, "Never has there been a more exciting time to be alive, a time of rousing wonder and heroic achievement. As they said in the film Back to the Future, where we're going, we don't need roads." Well, we do need roads, and thank goodness there are loads of licensed professional engineers around to help us build them. But for NSPE as a society, there is no limit to what we can do if we choose to. Now, at a time when this nation stood on the brink of civil war, Abraham Lincoln observed, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." That's very apt. But I would hearken back to a more optimistic turning point in history, when a group of colonies determined that the gamble of committing themselves to a more perfect union was worth the effort and the risk that it entailed. And Benjamin Franklin, quoting Thomas Paine, at the signing of the Declaration of Independence observed, "We must all hang together, or assuredly we shall all hang separately." Completing that bold experiment with democracy took many, many more years to complete. More than a decade later, after nearly 3 months of the Federal Convention's continuous sessions trying to draft and agree on a constitution for the new nation, Franklin was ill, in constant pain, and knew that he was near death. Now, the armchair that George Washington had occupied during the convention had a half-sun carved into the back of it as ornamentation. James Madison reported Franklin saying, "I have often and often in the course of the session and in the vicissitudes of my hopes and fears as to its issue, looked at that behind the president, without being able to tell whether it was a rising or setting sun. But now at length I have the happiness to know that it is a rising and not a setting sun. Thank you all very much.